So there's a place called Papunya Tula, and years ago, there was an art teacher that went there, and he was keen to see what the kids were drawing and the sort of art that they wanted to create. And he gave them art supplies and stuff because he saw them drawing cool little designs in the dirt around at lunchtime and all that sort of stuff. And he was like, yeah, have some art pencils and pens and all that sort of stuff. And these kids took them and they started doing these designs and patterns that were cool, and this guy was like, wow, this is fantastic stuff, show us more. But the old people started noticing that the kids were drawing these symbols and doing this work, and they sort of went to the teacher and said, hey, how have you got these pictures? And he's like, oh, the kids are drawing it, I reckon it's really awesome stuff, and want to encourage it. And they're like, yeah, that's cool and all. They don't know that they're telling you like all our secret stories and stuff by showing you that stuff. And he's like, well, what do we do? And they get together a whole bunch of elders from the different tribes that are all being pulled together and put in one place as a part of the resettlement stuff that was happening in Australian cities and towns at the time. And they all had conversations about, well, what can we share? What sort of law and art practices can they share? And they came together and they created a mural on the wall called the honey ant dreaming. And what they had realised by going through this process was that they were from different language areas, but they had these common stories. And that wouldn't have happened if these kids were drawing their stories and brought these people together through art. The honey ant dreaming was painted up on a big municipal building in the Papunya Tula settlement. And it was a mission. And the person who was in charge of the company town was like, no, you can't have this art thing on the wall. It's too black, it's too Aboriginal, too indigenous. No, this is a white person town, and they painted over the honey ant dreaming, one of the greatest acts of cultural vandalism that ever was. So, the reaction that comes out of Papunya Tula is they've established a set of symbols that they work with that's okay to share with everybody in the world. The classic ones you see on tourist brochures and all that sort of stuff. Circles for yarning circles and certain patterns for animal prints. That's the secret language that was created to share with the world. And the people started using whatever they could find to create their art because they weren't allowed to sell it or distribute it. Only a few years, 20 years before, had Albert Namatjira been made a citizen of Australia, and these people are still getting ripped off for all their art for years and years later. But they are taking bits of building material, putting the artworks on and smuggling them out of town and putting them onto the world stage. And Australian art goes boom across the world. When you think in Australian indigenous art, you think dot painting, right? This is why, this particular story, the honey ant dreaming and the guerrilla reaction to it. So hats off to them. I'm using a piece of old ply that I had from a job that never ended up happening. So it's recycled materials, it's what I had on hand, and it's telling that story. So I acknowledge the elders and the artists that have come before and allowed us to create good art and overthrow nasty people through awareness, change, focus and conversation. All right, here you go, I've got to get back to work.